Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 64 of Sports Speak. Hope you're having a great week. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
We're joined
I'm
today.
Tristan Biesel.
Yeah, we're joined today by Tristan Biesel, who's all excited to be here. We got a lot to discuss. Baseball, trade deadline, NBA, draft and free agency, NFL training camp started. We've already got brawls at the Giants camp and players not just randomly retiring. So it sounds like a fun time there, and we'll make our picks for NASCAR's return at Watkins Glen. But let's start things off in the NBA, where lots of news has come, and of course, it all centers around LA, which has hit the sports headlines a lot in the past week. And the Lakers making a deal to get Russell Westbrook and then adding a lot of veteran talent. They've signed Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, Kent Bazemore, all in free agency, to name a few. Tim, do you think this Lakers structured roster, all these old players, letting Alex Caruso and Kuzma go, do you think this is the right move for them to get back in title contention?
I mean, I think the Westbrook trade alone was the first move they need to make to really get back into contention. You know, the one thing the Lakers really lacked last season overall was depth. Granted, yes, they got Dennis Schroeder and so on, but the big thing is they couldn't stay healthy. Now, even in terms of Russell Westbrook, you know, Westbrook, he's had his battles through injuries throughout his career, but the one thing Russell Westbrook's been really, really good at, for the most part, even while being injured, is still finding ways to be on the floor. Now, granted, I mean, let's be honest, in terms of minutes, Westbrook probably, in terms of point guards, probably plays the most, if not maybe second most minutes in the league in terms of guys out there. Now, obviously, of course, being stuck in Washington, only having Bradley Beal really around and not that much depth, somehow that team makes the playoffs. But granted, you need a guy like him out on the floor. But now you transition to a team, which, for the record, by the way, I really like these moves by LA. And granted, I know in the past, when you look at teams signing veteran players that, you know, getting up there in age, it's usually risky because, like, for example, with the Brooklyn Nets this year, you know, when you look what they did last season with all the injuries, you'd probably really question if they made the same moves, let's say, and took in the same guys to their roster. But you look at it. LeBron James is typically not a guy that is injured for, you know, on and off throughout a season. Granted, LeBron's had his injuries, but he's not a guy that, you know, misses 20, 30 games and then misses the playoffs. Anthony Davis, same exact way. They're always there for the big games when it matters. And granted, to an extent, they were there last season, but their depth level is at 100%. They needed a guard, and the fact that they got Russell Westbrook's huge. But I think the biggest signing, it's not Dwight Howard, you know, getting some height depth and, you know, some dunking ability down low. I think it's Carmelo Anthony. If we truly think about it, Carmelo Anthony is only playing in the NBA at this point in his career now, after the few seasons he missed off and so on, because he has one goal. He just wants to win a ring. And think about it, 2-3 years ago, when we were all talking about this, oh, where's Melo going to land? No one expected Portland. Everyone thought he was going to be joining LeBron and the Lakers. And guess what? Now he's finally there. And the fact is this, you know, the Lakers needed to be hungry again. After winning a championship, you know, 2 seasons ago, I look at it as this team said, all right, well, we're good. We know we're going to be good again next year. And they weren't as hungry enough to turn around and try to make it back-to-back championships. But you look at this roster. I already mentioned Melo. And I briefly mentioned Westbrook. We still can't forget, Westbrook doesn't have a ring. Westbrook wants to win a ring. And, of course, Anthony Davis and LeBron had their ring with this team. But the way I view this team is this. Granted, you look at past talent, you know, Melo, what he is now compared to where he was in his past. Who knows? He could re-energize that. We know how athletic Dwight Howard could be. But at the end of the day, the true question is, and for the record, to answer your first question, yes, I like the moves. But the true question is this team going to be healthy when it all matters? That I don't know. But I will say this. If they are healthy, this team may be the best team in the West. It's bound to happen if that's this way. This team suddenly got just a little bit better defensively. And on top of it, I mean, again, you have another guy that can shoot the ball and you can really spread the ball around, you know, to their liking. Let's not forget, too, that Dwight Howard already was in this Lakers system prior, so he kind of has an understanding of how to play with LeBron and Anthony Davis. So I think at the end of the day, this is great moves for the Lakers. And again, last season, again, it was a bit of up and down. But this is looking really good for this team.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. If they stay healthy, this, I think, is the most talented roster in the West. But from what we saw this past season, it was young teams that succeeded, especially the Phoenix Suns. So, Tristan, do you think this new Lakers philosophy could be successful in the new season?
If you really think about it, I think they can. It's just, like Tim said, can that team stay healthy, especially going into the later part of the season? I was doing some research beforehand, and let this sink in. LeBron is the most tenured member of that Lakers team. He's been there for 3 seasons. You got new guys coming in. Westbrook, triple-double man. I think he's the missing piece. I mean, sure, you got Anthony Davis, and you had Dennis Schroeder last year, but having that true force on the court, like Russell Westbrook, and bringing in Melo, I think you've seen LeBron and Melo on the Olympic scene and the global scene perform so well together. And the question was, if they were to ever come together, I mean, obviously now it's not the best time. Both guys are, I wouldn't say LeBron's past his prime as the greatest player to play basketball in our generation. But bringing those two together may bring Melo that ring. He's been wanting it for so long that it's just, did we crash?
No, we're still good.
All right, everything just went black for me. But no, bringing those guys together, and you got guys like Westbrook, that starting 5 is stacked. You got Marc Gasol and Dwight Howard that can swap in and out. Bringing Dwight Howard back adds that defensive depth. If Marc Gasol goes down, Dwight Howard can step up. You got guys like Ken Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Wayne Ellington, Malik Monk, Austin Reeves, and signing Kendrick Nunn as well. Bringing in all that veteranosity. You hear that word in hockey, veteranosity. You bring all of these guys together, and they can win a ring coming out of the West. But like Tim said, and like you said, some of these younger teams, Phoenix, especially Phoenix, they set together a very good NBA Finals run. Shame they couldn't beat my Bucks, but yeah, I think the Lakers can perform very well. If healthy, they are the best team in the West. Russell Westbrook, even if one of those guys were to go down, it's next man up mentality. Say, for some ungodly reason, LeBron goes down. Westbrook can take that leadership role and carry the team forward. They can be the best team in the West, like I said. If they stay healthy, they can make a run. But it just depends on who comes out of the East, if they get that ring or not.
Yeah, and we can talk about the East some more in a moment, but I think with the Lakers too, what Russell Westbrook adds is a chance for LeBron to go back to being a forward again, because he's basically been the point guard on this team for these past 3 years, and yet he still shined in that position. But think about the most dangerous LeBron James was probably in his time with the Miami Heat or his second time with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he either had or Kyrie Irving as his point guard. So he's actually able to kind of go back to just being a dangerous scorer rather than just being a facilitator. Russell Westbrook adds that variety to LeBron's game. But let's shift gears to the East, Tim, because there's been a lot of splashes there. And one team that particularly caught my eye, for example, are the Miami Heat, bringing in Kyle Lowry, also taking PJ Tucker from the Milwaukee Bucks. Tucker was kind of the face of that team towards the end. And I know you can't be too happy about losing PJ, Tristan, but
no, but we got Bobby Portis back, so I think there's a consolation prize there.
Yeah, you know what? Bobby Portis kind of fills that role, especially he did in those last couple of finals games. But Tim, the Heat, the Bulls, the Knicks, a lot of teams making splashes. What is the biggest difference-making move so far in free agency here in the Eastern Conference? Looks like Tim froze. Oh, there you go.
There we go. I was going to say, typically I don't really talk about the New York Knicks much, Eddie, but I have to say, when I woke up this morning and saw that Kemba Walker is coming to the New York Knicks, when you looked at it going into this free agency, they had a lot of options. They could have tried for Lonzo. Granted, I think it was pretty set in stone he was going to be going to Chicago. You could have tried for a guy like Spencer, who everyone thought was the full package for this team. But the fact that they were able to go with the veteran Kemba Walker, get a pretty solid, fair contract for Kemba, might I add. For me, the Knicks, and again, how do I put it like this? You have to replicate a season that you had last year, and if not, improve upon it. And for Knicks fans going into this offseason, to me, it's really hard because you didn't feel confident yet enough that this team can do it. Granted, Thibodeau's done a very, very good job coaching and putting this team together. But you didn't know who you were going to get. You didn't trust the process because, let's be honest, Knicks fans have had it in their head off-season after off-season that they've had failure after failure upon free agencies. So the way I look at it is this. The Knicks are actually being smart for once with their money. They're managing. They're not pushing the envelope here. Sure, there's some pressure. You'd love to see them be successful. But at the same time, you're seeing them, go get a guy like Kemba that could play some quality minutes if he's healthy, of course, not for an overexpensive value. Sure, you can get a couple nice, core free agents as well to, bolster the guard depth a little bit because let's be honest, this team was stacked in the forward position. They needed some guard help, going into this year. And you could still turn around next season. You can get a guy like Bradley Beal. You can get a superstar that can ultimately really help this team go to championship level. Now, I'm not going to jump and say the Knicks are going to win the championship because let's be honest, it's the New York Knicks. It's still unpredictable. This season alone was unpredictable. But I have to say, them signing Kemba Walker to me was the biggest surprise because, I don't know for you guys, but at least going into this offseason, he wasn't on the radar for the Knicks at all. We've seen the Cavs as well, for the record. They've made a couple underrated moves as well, bringing back and bring in some guys. And I don't want to switch to the Western Conference outside of, we mentioned the Lakers, but we're seeing, for example, the Jazz as well pick up a couple big guys, in the forward position, such as Hassan Whiteside and so forth. So I'm real interested to see how this kind of offseason shakes out because, typically every year we have a superstar in free agency in terms of the NBA. This year, you have a lot of role guys, or I don't want to say non-superstars, but you have a good basketball players, but they're not good enough to be the face of your franchise. And I think that this free agency could be the most pivotal one in terms for many teams in the Eastern Conference as well as the NBA in terms of balancing, because you can get some really good pieces moving forward to either can make you a championship team or can help you for the future in developing a championship team. And I think the Knicks took that first step here, getting Kemba Walker.
Yeah, they finally got themselves – I know Kemba Walker's been hurt, but they finally got themselves a quote-unquote superstar, someone who at least can be considered in that caliber after missing out on so many. Tristan, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Miami we mentioned, even Chicago bringing in DeMar DeRozan. What are some of the most key moves you've seen in the Eastern Conference? You're muted, Tristan. Still muted, Tristan. Yeah, you got to click on that microphone. There you go.
I didn't know I was muted. Oh, shit. All right. So, y'all hear me now, right? We're good.
Yeah. Yep, we got you now.
All right. So, yeah. Chicago. Whew. Man, making some very good moves. Lonzo, Caruso, DeRozan. Chicago's formed a little mini big three with Vucevic as well. And I think Chicago will be in playoffs. I think if everyone can perform at their levels that they're supposed to, Lonzo isn't no slouch. He was very touted coming in. And Chicago, after years of mediocrity, after losing D-Rose, they're finally back to that playoff level. Obviously, I don't think they're near the level of the Bucks or the Nets yet, but make some more moves, and hopefully they'll be in that position. And obviously, the Bucks making moves, the Heat getting Kyle Lowry, and extending Duncan Robinson to a mammoth contract, considering he was an undrafted player. And the East is shaping up to be a very formidable, arduous season coming up. And whoever comes out of the East will be a very hard challenge for the Lakers, because that's my pick coming out of the West.
Yeah, I mean, the East is going to be so tough because, yeah, we have our faith in Brooklyn, but we saw what the Nets happened to them this year, and the Bucks are going to have some changes. The Heat got better, the Bulls got better, but still some time in free agency, still a lot to see what goes down. But Major League Baseball, on the other hand, shifting gears a little bit to the trade deadline, we saw some superstars on the move. I mean, thinking about all the losses for the Chicago Cubs, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo.
Oh, no. I was just over that. Reinforcing my PTSD from a couple days ago. My God, and we turned into a wholesale liquidation. You get an all-star, you get an all-star, you get an all-star. You get a closing pitcher who has no gas tank. You get Jake Marisnick. We traded away our entire team. Our entire infield is gone.
The worst part is that they've all played so well, too. All three of them hit home runs in their team debuts.
Anthony Rizzo's raking like it's 2016. Chris Bryant is Chris Bryant. And the Mets have Lindor and Baez. That is a combination that I've wanted to see. I wanted to see Lindor come to the Cubs last year in free agency, but knowing it wasn't going to happen. But I think the Cubs are looking towards a rebuild. If you really think about it, why would they make these moves? They are a fringe wild card contender, especially with that NL Central. But it's crazy to me that in the span of 5 years, we go from having this core winning a World Series to that entire core being gone. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Hayward, Contreras, and Hendricks, and Ross as the manager are the only 4 players I can remember that are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for Contreras. He's like, I'm watching all my buddies go. Where are all my buddies gone? And we lost Craig Kimbrell. We traded him to the South Side. And we lose a little bit there. But we do have Hendricks and Davies and a very stout pitching core for that as well. And the hitting. Who's going to be hitting for us besides P. Wiz, Hayward, and Contreras? Ian Happ, maybe. But it looks like we're going to blow it up. I mean, sure, we got a whole prospects for trading Baez, Rizzo, and Bryant. It's just, why blow it up now, knowing that we are coming into free agency? Sure, make the moves. But also, free agency was coming up. We could have given those guys money and put in some fresh prospects.
The question is, how much money do the Cubs still have to spend on those guys? Because they're not the Yankees. They're not the
Dodgers. And that's what I was also thinking. It was either we were going to get one of them or 2 of them. We weren't going to get all 3, and one of them was going to have to go. And it was just, instead of taking all that money, just trade them off. The Yankees got Rizzo and Joey Gallo, and it adds to that power hitting depth of Stanton and Judge and LeMahieu. That Yankees hitting core, when they're all playing their best, can hit majestic 500-foot dongs on a moment's notice.
Which we still haven't seen this season. Even though we scored 13 runs yesterday.
Against Baltimore.
Okay, it's against Baltimore, though. Do we really count it?
But that's what I'm still waiting for the Yankees to hit. We're lucky if we get 5 hits a game. So, in my opinion, the Yankees are one of the worst offenses in baseball. And if the Arizona Diamondbacks didn't exist, I would say they probably are the worst. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, but the whole thing with the Cubs, too, there is still the potential for them to maybe sign one of these guys. Javier Baez, for example, I am repping my Mets, but I got to be honest here. Knowing how cheap the Mets can be sometimes, and I know they have Steve Cohen, but still, I don't really know if Baez is going to be here past next season. So how about the Cubs? You bring in the Mets' first-round pick from last year, and Pete Crow Armstrong, who's going to be an elite outfielder in a couple of years' time, and you still have the potential to bring back Baez. From the comments that Anthony Rizzo was making, I saw on a radio show for Chicago yesterday, it does not seem like he necessarily wants to come back. So I think he's the one that's definitely going to be gone. Chris Bryant is kind of in the middle, but the thing that really irks me, and I know Tristan is a Cubs fan, you might be a little upset about this too. Bryant, Rizzo, they bring the first championship in over a century, and they don't get a final at bat in front of the Wrigley crowd. They get benched that day.
Very dirty. The front office, man, dude. You don't even give them a chance. You just stick them on a plane and you ship them off like they were a waste of space. And those three guys were there. They came up through the Cubs roster, through the Cubs development. They brought us a championship. And less than half a decade later, they're gone. Most times you don't see World Series championship players going that early in retrospect. I mean, sure, Pedroia retired after winning with the Sox in 18, but most World Series teams stick with their core, like the Dodgers. Oh, man, the Dodgers made some moves. Scherzer and Turner.
I mean,
and
yeah.
It's just the Dodgers are buying their way to another ring.
I mean,
I'm going to ask this. I'm going to say, because I'm going to ask this. You mentioned the Dodgers, but realistically, outside of Clayton Kershaw, who on that roster was actually a core that they developed? Think about it. And again, and Eddie, I'm sure we're going to talk about, after this whole process for the Dodgers as well, continuing to buy superstars during this trade deadline. This is a team that absolutely is becoming the face of baseball in terms of what a dynasty looks like. Every single season, there's a change. There's a pursuance of continuous success. And I think to compare that to the Chicago Cubs, and if I can just put one point in real quickly, the way I see this Cubs situation, I view it no differently from the Boston Red Sox. And just bear with me here for a moment. You look at the Dodgers, you look at the Yankees, for example. They're big money franchises in terms of baseball. Not that Boston
they're pop culture icons,
but they're right down in the borderline from the top. But granted, they had their icons, right? But their systems and how they were put together. When Boston had a really, really good team put together, right, in terms of superstars, veterans, they turn around the following 2 seasons. They have a mediocre year. They trade everyone away. And then what does Boston do again the upcoming offseason? They keep some of their big guys, and then they turn around, they rebuy again. And then they turn around, they find success. Chicago to do the Cubs, they've been mediocre over the last 5 seasons. Since they've won that World Series, they've practically had the same roster season in, season out. And what the Dodgers have proven in terms of baseball right now, complacency does not lead to success. You have to make differences. I mean, legitimately, every season for the Los Angeles Dodgers, there is a difference on that team. It doesn't have to be a superstar, but there is a major difference in terms of someone playing games, whatever. Trey Turner is a huge acquisition. What does it mean for Seager in his future in terms of baseball overall? Who knows? But Turner, that's a big acquisition. The fact of the matter is, you're able to get Max Scherzer as well. I mean, if this was 3 years ago, Dodgers fans would probably be going even more nuts than what they are now. Max Scherzer, let's not forget, was one of the best pitchers in baseball. And granted, these last 2 years haven't been the quote-unquote best for him. Statistics-wise, they're still top 5% baseball numbers in terms of all pitchers. Max Scherzer is arguably going to go down not just as a Hall of Famer, but one of the greatest pitchers to ever live. And that's the fact of the matter of that. And the way I look at this rotation, they have guys that pitch quality innings. They can get production. Chicago, in terms of fire sailing everyone, let's be honest. a lot of guys outside of Yu Darvish, in which they had lost, really weren't that productive. Craig Kimbrell was productive, don't get me wrong, but his contract made him a little bit hard to work with. And the fact of the matter is, Chris Bryant, a really good player, but we can't say he hasn't lacked productivity over the last 2 or 3 seasons compared to what he's done in his past. Same thing with Anthony Rizzo. Granted, right now he's raking for the Yankees. We can't forget about the fact that he's typically a 270, 280 hitter. And the last 2 seasons, he's batted a 230 and a 240 respectively before he got traded. And Javier Baez, the man wants $200 million to bat a 230? I don't care how good of a power hitter you are. I mean, let's put it like this.
Yeah, pick up your batting numbers before you ask for that much money.
Well, indeed, but that's like Chris Davis turning around and asking for $300 million for going 0 for 54 and then hitting a 50 home run season. Or Curtis Granderson, remember when he went to the Mets, Eddie? How much did the Mets sign him for? Do you remember?
I don't even remember, but I know he wanted a lot.
It was barely over $100 million. And granted, that's like him asking for $300 million because he had 240 home run seasons while batting a low 200 for the New York Yankees. So at the end of the day, I view this as a win for the Cubs. You can develop, you can find ways in the next season or two. It doesn't have to be long term. I think baseball is going, for the record, very far away, except for those very, very small teams like the Athletics.
Some of those more small market.
The ROM that don't really have fan bases. Exactly. You're going away from developing superstars in minor league systems and just going out and buying. Minor league baseball has changed a lot over the last 5 years. The game of baseball alone in the last 2 years has changed a lot. But I think if you're a medium market team or a big market team, your pure focus is going to be sell, rebuy, sell, rebuy.
These small market teams can't do that.
Right now, the Cubs. Well, exactly. But it's a repeated process, but there's always an aspect of change. And the Cubs haven't had that for 4 or 5 seasons. And I think this is the first aspect of change. And let's be honest, for example, the New York Yankees, granted they haven't won a World Series, right? When they moved away from Mark Teixeira, Alex Rodriguez, Robinson Cano was obviously long gone to Seattle. Derek Jeter retired. This team was mediocre, and then they brought the Baby Bombers. Aaron Judge, okay, didn't look so good the first stint, and then turns out to be a superstar. Tyler Austin, okay, it wasn't exactly that. But you look at guys, no one knew who that Ronald Torreyes was. I think he came from L.A. prior. Turned out to be a really good depth guy for the Yankees. Yeah, we knew what Brett Gardner was, but he actually regressed by then. And the Yankees turned around, made some big things. The next thing you know, this young pitching staff, Luis Severino, after going 0 for something after a great first season, turns out to be an ace at the time. And you're starting to build the pen and so on after Mariano's, retirement. And the team found success because there was zero expectations in the first place. And I think the big thing for the Cubs right now is you're going to find some core guys for this team because of the fact that you're selling. And there's going to be some guys that they're going to find that, hey, are really good Major League Baseball players and have a role in the future of this team. And because they were behind big money veterans that they couldn't move, trade, or pick up.
There are 2 types of teams in baseball I feel like that can really compete. You've got the perennial contenders who can always spend and buy. And those are the Yankees, the Dodgers, and in some ways, I think the San Francisco Giants. And then you've got the teams that can do it in spurts. The Giants kind of go back and forth between the 2 groups. But Boston fits into that. The Cubs fit into that. The Mets now with new ownership, I think, sort of fit into that. The White Sox as well. And maybe the Detroit Tigers. Those are the teams that yeah, the Padres as well are a similar team in that boat. But the Yankees and Dodgers are teams who can always spend. And that's just the way it is in baseball because there's no salary cap. And that's just the way it's going to continue to be right now. And the fact that the Dodgers, think about it, their big pitching signing, the reigning Cy Young Trevor Bauer, we don't even know if we're going to see him on a baseball field again. Their MVP from 2 years ago, Cody Bellinger, is hitting 156 despite both of those things, this team is still a powerhouse. They've got like 7 Cy Youngs amongst their current roster. They've got 6 total MVP victories on their roster. They bring in Albert Pujols out of nowhere when we thought he was done with the Angels. So I just wanted to make that last point here that the Dodgers and Yankees are still in a class amongst themselves. The Dodgers, of course, big-time contenders in the NL West and for the NL pennant once again. In the American League, I mean, the Yankees still have a hill to climb. Like Tim said, they're still lacking some consistency, but Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo are certainly going to help their cause. But I want to shift gears now to the NFL. Training camp has started, and for the New York Giants, Tim, it's gotten interesting. So apparently there was a big brawl at camp that somehow Daniel Jones ended up at the bottom of the pile, and now Joe Looney, who was one of their signings to kind of bolster their line game, he retired today. I mean, it seems like a crazy situation. Joe Judge was supposedly very mad at the players. I mean, are the Giants a dysfunctional team right now heading into the season?
Well, theoretically, I guess you could say 2 players retired from the New York Giants because, in my honest opinion, I consider Kelvin Benjamin being a retirement before even being on the football field, it felt like. But at the end of the day, you know, you mentioned the fight with Daniel Jones on the bottom of the pile. I think that when you get pads on for the first time and you start to get back to physicality, it's a very common thing. And I think that there's a huge spotlight regarding the New York Giants because of the fact that, of course, granted New Jersey, but New York media putting pressure on a team, just for example, like the New York Jets, you know, with Zach Wilson, and what's that expectation for that team moving forward? Because that team also has some promise. But at least for the New York Giants, you know, there's expectation of you had a mediocre season last year. You make all these moves throughout free agency to, you know, bolster your depth and get this team better. And instantly, first day, you know, of pads back on, they're fighting. But I look at the people that triggered the fight, and I really start to question and say, you know, maybe this wasn't as bad as what it's played out to be. Just hear me out for a second, because the people that started the fight was Logan Ryan, a team, essentially a team captain, basically, and a guy that is a leader in terms of the veterans on this team, and Evan Ingram, a guy who is playing for a contract extension, was a bust Pro Bowler last year. And yes, I will say that as a Giants fan. Let's be honest. Robert Tonyan deserved to be in the Pro Bowl, not Evan Ingram. And the fact of the matter is, they're trying to compete at each other and go hard every second. And as an offensive player, your mentality, and defensive player as well, but in terms of the offense, for example, your job is to protect Big Brother back there behind quarterback and protect your guys around you. Same mentality goes for the defense. You see a guy going at it, you're going to do that too. I'm not saying it's justified, but this is what happens in football, unfortunately. For 18 seconds of play, it's a train wreck. Every single time you hit the field, it is a car crash, no matter what way you put it. And at the end of the day, I have to say, I have to credit the Giants for one thing. That could have been the message set by veterans of, you got to take care. You've got to show physicality, but you've got to show that you want to be here and, you know, give everyone a tough time because we're tired of losing. And Logan Ryan, for the record, I have to say this, one of the most authentic interviews I've ever seen from a player in a very, very long time outside of Aaron Rodgers. Because let's be honest, Aaron Rodgers was money this year with everything he's had to say since he came back for training camp.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
But at the end of the day, my question for this about the New York Giants, again, Joe Judge, I will say this. I loved everything about Joe Judge season 1. I have not had a bad thing yet to say about him. About a fifth of the way through season 1, when Ben McAdoo was head coach, I already knew what play calls he was calling with my eyes closed. Granted, right now Joe Judge isn't the one calling the play calls. It's Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham on the defensive end. But at the end of the day, we're seeing versatility. We're seeing a change for the Giants. We're seeing transition. And I'm not saying this team's going to go win a Super Bowl. But to me, this is blown out of proportion of being a negative thing and could turn out to be a positive thing. Yes, it's not good seeing your starting quarterback on the bottom of a pile, but Joe Judge has expectations for this team to be a competitive from the ground up football team that's going to do anything they can to win. Give it all on their field, for 4 quarters at a time, 15 minutes per quarter, just laying it all on the line. That's what you want to see. 60 full minutes of competitive football from the New York Giants. And I think that was truthfully the first step we're going to see. Again, I'm not going to say that this team's going to go do spectacular things because it's still the New York Giants, let's be honest. I truthfully still don't think Daniel Jones is the answer, but that's a whole nother discussion and debate for another time. But I think this is blown out of proportion. This is more of a positive thing, Eddie, than a negative thing. The retirements are retirements. It happens for every team. But the Giants need a wake-up call. They need to show why they belong. And I think players are going to understand that come the end of this training camp. It's either you give 100% or you don't at all. And that's the bottom line.
Well, that's a cute little spin on it, but it's still infighting between two of the leaders of the team, Tim. I still don't – I understand your message, and I get the physicality and the car accidents and everything. But you know what? It's still – you got your captain on defense, and you've still got your Pro Bowl tight end, regardless of how you feel about it.
Bust Pro Bowl tight end.
Bust
Pro Bowl tight end.
He shouldn't have been there. But you know what? It's still 2 leaders in the team that are causing brawls that somehow lead to Daniel Jones at the bottom of a pile. And I know Joe Judge is a tough coach, and hopefully this kind of slows issues like that down. But think about some of these teams in the past. Think about the Baltimore Ravens of the past, for example, who have had a bunch of tough guys on their defense, and then they're all fighting it with each other. And then a lot of times they don't pan out to be as good of a team as they were expected to be. I'm not saying the Giants have ridiculously sky-high expectations either, but I think it's just something to watch out for. And as a Giant fan, well, I'm not a Giant fan, obviously, everybody knows that. But if you're a Giant fan, Tim, and to any other Giant fan, you don't want to see something like this happening again in training camp.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned the Ravens. How many people do you think Ray Lewis fought during, training camp and so on? I'm sure there's multiple guys. No, seriously, Ray Lewis fought with multiple people. How many Super Bowl rings did that turn out for him? I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. Granted, that's a different era. Ray Lewis is once in a generation type of a linebacker. But, even, for example, Justin Tuck, Osia Manura, all those guys talked about how it's very common. Not that it's justified, but it does bring a level of intensity, and it does bring to the plate. Again, when you're a defensive lineman, you represent your guys. You will do anything to show out, if you were a team leader, what you need to do on a regular basis. Logan Ryan was trying to push Evan Ingram to his fullest to try to make him and himself better. And I don't blame him in terms of his explanation. I truthfully do believe him, because Logan Ryan's been nothing but truthful since he's joined the NFL overall and has been a member of the New York Giants. And I think when you look at it again, you can put it whatever way, 2 teammates fighting, but I just view it practicing hard in a disagreement. At the end of the day, no one got hurt. It didn't turn out like Geno Smith breaking a jaw in the locker room. So to me, it's a win-win. No one got hurt. And I think the players have the fine line of you don't fight in practice, but you also, or I should say, you don't get out of control. People fight in practice all the time, but you don't get out of control to the point where things boil over and your quarterback's, on the bottom of a pile. But let's also see what this team's going to be made of. Again, already Giants have injury woes. That's a big thing as well. You just went and you spent so much money on Kenny Galladay, and he's already hurt. So that's going to put a little bit of pressure on Kadarius Toney. But let's also not act like Sterling Shepard, who has really always been a number 2 or 3 guy in terms of a slot, plays a bigger role. And Darius Slayton, I really hope he has hands this year, because in my opinion, he arguably has worse hands than Evan Ingram. And I would love to see Slayton have a 1,000-yard season again. So I'm eager to see what the Giants have. But for the first time in a while, they're versatile, and that's the big thing.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because Tim did mention Aaron Rodgers in his pressers, and I want to get Tristan's take here. Aaron's back. Well, he's back, and he's ready to play. Well, we don't know how long. He's going to probably be back for this season, and in all likelihood, they're going to be successful this season. But Tristan, I mean, of course, there's got to be – we talked about this a little bit with Zoe and Maddie on the show last week, but there's got to be some issues now with chemistry because you've got the players who were backing Aaron Rodgers to the core and probably would have left with him, like maybe a Devontae Adams. Then you have those who probably may not have been as outspoken, but were not happy with how Aaron Rodgers has been acting these past few months. So do you think that there's going to be a lack of chemistry that could hurt Green Bay's performance this season?
To an extent, yes. We've all been – and the media has been twisting it. Especially Schefter. Schefter's been twisting the narrative, and Aaron's press conference last week gave us that clarity and gave us that, okay, we finally heard what Aaron has to say. And as an honest Packers fan, I'm putting no bias into this. I'm surprised Aaron stayed after the stuff he said. I'm surprised he stayed. He is, in my opinion, the greatest quarterback, talent-wise, to ever play the game of football. And I will live and die by that statement. Y'all can crucify me if you want. I will live and die by that statement. But he said he wanted a bit more input on the rosters, and he was upset that Jake Kumaro last year got cut. He was upset by that. He was startled. He was hurt by seeing Jake Kumaro go to the Bills. And you can't have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones carrying the workload. And I just saw the report today. It just came out. Aaron said that instead of being a professional relationship with general manager Brian Gutekunst, that it's a work in progress. Sure as hell is a work in progress, considering that they drafted his replacement last year. Pretty much after, sure, we went 13-3, but in terms of Aaron Rodgers, he had an off year. He didn't even reach 30 touchdowns in 19. And we draft his replacement thinking he's regressing. And then he goes out and balls out like he's in 2011 form. And sure, he could be startled, but he also has a point. We aren't helping him. Sure, you got Devontae Adams. Sure, you got Marquez Valdez-Scantling when he decides to catch a ball once in the blue moon. Sure, you got Allen Lazard when he's healthy. You got Big Bob Tonyan, who is, in my opinion, besides Kelsey and Kittle and Mark Andrews and Darren Waller, one of the best tight ends in football. He had that breakout performance last year in terms of, speaking of Tonyan. He's going to be here. Aaron Jones, he's going to be here. Allen Lazard, if he's healthy, he's going to be here. Randall Cobb, getting back in that slot position. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb, the deadliest trio probably in the league, besides Mahomes, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill. But it seems like I'm rambling. Kind of am. It's been a very long offseason in Titletown. And you asked me, is it going to hurt the chemistry? Yes, it will. It's gonna hurt the chemistry, but we'll see in the next couple of weeks during the preseason if that chemistry is still there. And it's a lot. It's going to be a lot to deal with. We still don't know Aaron's future going into next year. I have a funny feeling he's going to go, and I wouldn't be surprised considering how shady we've done him. We've built the offense so much. We had the highest scoring offense last year. Defense hurt us. If Kevin King doesn't get burnt by a 5'7" Scotty Miller, we're going to the Super Bowl. And sure, we drafted Eric Stokes. We got Jair Alexander, the best corner in the league. We got Amos, who in the back is a safety. We got Zadarius. We got the Super Smith Bros. We got Kenny Clark. But is that going to be enough to get us over the hump that is Tom Brady, the defending champion Buccaneers? Is that going to be enough? Yeah. Is our offensive line going to be as versatile as it was last year? Losing Corey Linsley. Sure, and we drafted a bunch of white Big Ten offensive linemen. And according to Aaron, one of them's playing very well in training camp. And that gives me a sign of hope that with Corey Linsley gone, this draft pick can slot right into the most versatile offensive line in the league.
Well, and it's all – and you mentioned the defense and everything, and that's all great. But to be able to maximize on how strong Aaron Rodgers is. And he's still an elite quarterback at this age. He's still one of the best by far in the NFL right now. You need to give him weapons. And the fact that the Green Bay Packers in 15 years have drafted one first-round wide receiver in these just 15 years where we've had so many elite slot receivers coming out of the draft is crazy. And I know Davante Adams has panned out and all that, but there's got to be still some frustration. And I'm sorry, bringing back 36-year-old Randall Cobb from the Houston Texans.
In year 10, yeah. It was a ploy. It was a ploy to give Rodgers that control that he wants. My dad and I were talking about this before the press conference. Aaron Rodgers is a football player. This is not the NBA where you have LeBron calling the shots. And he may have wanted what Brady had in New England, and to an extent in Tampa, what he has. He wants that power of, I am the reason we are successful. At least in New England, Brady partially was the reason they were successful. I think Aaron wants that. He wants that. I am the reason people are here. I am the reason we are successful. You are a football player first and foremost. Sure, you are one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, but you are here to play football. Sure, you can be frustrated, but holding out, knowing that you were, and he was inevitably going to get what he wanted.
Well, hold on. See, now I'm a bit confused. Are you blaming Aaron for holding out to get his way? Because
no, I'm not blaming. Partially, yes, because he could have came out way before training camp. He could have said something instead of taking the off season and going dark. That's basically what happened here. He went dark.
Yeah, but Aaron doesn't like media. There's very few things outside the Pat McAfee show that he does in regards to genuinely expressing himself.
Exactly.
Media twist stories, so why not let media make all these fake news and all these opportunities? And then he comes out and speaks when he's obligated to, coming back for his job.
It's not like this. I just want to say, it's not like this is brand new either. It's not like he's just doing this year. It's been almost 10 years.
No.
RELAX. I mean, this has been going on forever. This is just how Aaron Rodgers is. And I don't think we can particularly just start crucifying him because of that. It's just how he is. It's how he operates. But at the same time, I believe that he has earned the respect to at least be given some weapons to help him. Having a good defense is one thing. Yeah, but you got to give him receivers to be able to succeed. He's got to be able to do things himself. You can't just bank on the defense and bank on someone being able to stop Scotty Miller. You've got to have weapons for Aaron Rodgers to be able to do his craft and win that game on the offense.
Aaron Rodgers had Davante Adams last year, and that was basically it. Sure, we had Tunyon for the goal line options and for the goal line offense. Allen Lazard wasn't that healthy last year. MVS. When that guy catches a football consistently, come get me, please. And we have, in my opinion, we have the most versatile offensive line in the league. Elton Jenkins played every position on the line last year and got Pro Bowl nod. Bakhtiari tore his ACL, unfortunately, right before the postseason. And we have Aaron Jones, we have A.J. Dillon, we had Jamal Williams. Aaron, not in terms of receiving help, hasn't had those weapons since Jordy and Randall Cobb left. It's been Aaron and Davante tight-knit like this. And then everyone else. Lazard filled that role. James Jones. Alan Lazard is currently filling the role that James Jones filled, that Jeff Janis filled, that Geronimo Allison filled. He hasn't had true elite weapons since Jordy was there. And God help us if they push to get Jordy back. Because he's been retired for a couple years. And sure, you want to do the last dance, it might as well be. Because I have a funny feeling if Aaron goes, a lot of people are going to go with him.
I think there's no way Davante Adams stays if Aaron Rodgers goes.
Because no one has faith in Jordan Love. We haven't seen that man take a snap.
Mm-hmm.
None of us, I have a small amount of faith in Jordan Love, but we got the GOAT Kurt Benkert now, guys. Come on now. But no, in all seriousness, if this truly is the last dance and this is Aaron's last all-in year, and if he can and if by some God-given miracle the front office can rebuild that relationship with him and help him stay, he'll ride out the rest of his career as a Packer. Because he's getting close to 40. Sure, Brady's 44, but he's got to do some type of fucking drug to keep going. Oh my God.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think happens to Aaron Rodgers if for the 1 millionth time he loses in the NFC Championship again?
He leaves.
He leaves. So if you
wait, you're asking me for another NFC Championship loss. Who says we even get there to begin with?
And that's a fair point as well.
Fair point, but I just want to say, in the grand scope of things in the NFC, there are not a lot of great teams this year. You have Tampa, you have Green Bay. The Saints are no longer the Saints without Drew Brees. The East is still a mess with all four of those teams.
What do you think about the 49ers, though? The 49ers is a healthy team, are one of the best teams in football. We saw that in 49ers.
You know what, though? I'm not convinced by the 49ers because I'm not
either, to be honest. A defense is one of the best defenses in football.
I love Tom Brady, and I love the Bucs and everything they have on that team right now. But I'm going to tell you something, and again, it goes for every sport. I mentioned the Dodgers, for example, in baseball. Just because you won a championship last year doesn't mean you're going to turn around and do it again. You got complacent. I'll give you another example. Kansas City Chiefs. After they won the Super Bowl, granted, they made, a couple changes to the defense because that's where they've always been lacking because they've had a great offensive department. Sure, they got Le'Veon Bell and so on, but, in the middle of the season. But what big changes did that team actually make?
Not a single one. I mean, besides giving Mahomes $500 million.
Exactly. And what happened? Granted, yes, they went to the Super Bowl again. And granted, it's not Patrick Mahomes' fault. Injuries are injuries. That's whatever. But they didn't come out in the successful end. And they didn't win a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying that their Super Bowl campaign and runs are over.
They're going to be going for quite a while.
What did they turn around and do this offseason? They started to make a little bit more progress in making changes, which is why I'm still convinced Kansas City is going to be a good franchise. You win a Super Bowl.
Do you think they come out of the AFC this year, though? That's the question. The AFC is way more competitive than the NFC. The NFC, like Eddie said, it's Green Bay, Tampa Bay, everyone else, to be honest with you. The NFC East is in fucking shambles right now with the Giants and the football team. Those two teams are going to be battling it out this year. Cowboys, sure.
I think
healthy Dak Prescott.
I think you're going to be really surprised with the NFC East because, for example, and again, I know I keep on referencing baseball, but just like how the Boston Red Sox were so quiet this offseason and slowly made good moves, I feel like a lot of teams, and granted, New York with its media put a lot of focus on it, made a lot of good moves, but I also feel like a lot of teams made really good progress, like Dallas. And you mentioned Washington, Fitzmagic still has some magic left in him, in my opinion. The question is, I just don't know if that's a Super Bowl caliber team still. But we can't also act like Philadelphia, granted the draft wasn't the best for them on a defensive end. We can't say that this team didn't do a little bit to try to better that team a little bit.
They did. They made the moves. They drafted Devontae Smith.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about in terms of defense.
But he's injured now, so that's fun.
So what I'm saying is I feel like the NFC East has always been underrated because of the fact of those last few years. And I think on the NFC side, yeah, the Packers and the Bucs are great, but I still can't ignore the fact that the Bucs are complacent. Other teams are trying to go up there and compete with the Bucs. For example, Seattle Seahawks. Did anyone expect them to reign success? No one even expected Russell Wilson to be good. And I know that's the Legion of Boom years ago, but it falls under the same standpoint. That team made so many changes to eventually become a Super Bowl caliber team. And I look at it for the Bucs. It baffles me. You want the same exact team from last year.
They signed all 22 starters.
Everyone regresses. Exactly.
And I mean, they had They had massive holes last season on both sides. Their offense couldn't score sometimes. Their defense was inconsistent at times as well. But only time will tell in the NFL. I do want to shift gears, though, to get to one more thing on this show. NASCAR is back from the Olympic break this weekend at Watkins Glen. And I am pumped because Watkins Glen, it's been 2 years since they've raced there. Still one of my favorite tracks in the schedule. And we've seen the road course racing be interesting this year, to say the least. And it's the third to last one. We still got a couple more after that. We've had 2 surprise winners in a row in the Cup Series now. Kurt Busch winning in Atlanta, Eric Almirola at New Hampshire. Still some playoff spots up for grabs. Couple of surprise winners, and Kevin Harvick could finally find himself in a really dangerous position as he hasn't gotten a victory lane yet. But heading to Watkins Glen, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr. have probably been the 3 fastest cars at the road courses so far this season. Tristan, I'll start with you. Who's your pick this weekend in the Cup Series at Watkins Glen?
I'm going to give you 2. From my head, it's Chase Elliott. He won the last road course race out of Road America, won COTA, 7 road course wins. He's also the defending race winner here, having won the last 2 times we were there. But my heart is telling me Martin Truex Jr. He's my boy. He's also performed very well on the road courses. Like you said, him, Larson, and Elliott have been the 3 fastest guys. But there's also those veterans. I think Harvick could perform well. I mean, Watkins Glen, not his best track, but also their unpredictability in the wild card that is road course racing. Who doesn't say that is AJ Allmendinger in the entry list this weekend?
I don't think he's racing this weekend, but I do want to say, though, there are some other dark horses who have been really fast at road courses this year too. Daniel Suarez, for example, Matt DiBenedetto, 2 guys who are looking to win. Ross Chastain as well was really fast at Road America. So if something happens, we've seen some crazy wrecks. If something happens, if there's somehow rain in the forecast for whatever reason, and we know how chaotic NASCAR can be in that, I mean, you could see one of those guys up there. DiBenedetto, Chastain, they were keeping right up with Chase and Larson and Truex at Road America, which isn't that different from a track from Watkins Glen because there's some heavy braking zones and some high-speed portions. So personally, my pick is still, I got to go with Tristan here, Chase Elliott. Right now, I mean, he's the best road course driver in the series right now by far, but I wouldn't count out Truex, and I think as a dark horse, Ross Chastain just got that contract with Trackhouse for next year in that 1 car. He's going to be motivated. His brother Chad is racing in the truck race. I didn't even know Chad Chastain exists, and he's in the truck race. So, I mean, this could be a fun weekend for Watermelon Nation. I think he's going to be –
It's going to be a good weekend. I am excited for this weekend. And correct me, is it 13 or 14 winners this year with Almirola winning last week?
I think 13, and then Denny Hamlin is probably going to have the 14th spot as the points leader. So
who's not to say that Suarez and Harvick in a 3rd winner? What's to say that we don't get 3 new first-time winners this season? Who says that doesn't happen? Now, I don't know what the protocol is if Denny doesn't win. If he wins a regular season championship, that gives him the spot, doesn't it?
Yeah, regardless if he wins or not. And unless something catastrophic happens, Kyle Larson's probably not going to pass him. So
no, he's not going to pass him. Denny could – it's a baffling thought that Denny couldn't win, that Denny might not win, but his raw consistency. Hendrick has fallen off the past couple of races. I mean, minus Chase winning at Road America, but it's Chase Elliott at a road course. Those odds are high. But they've fallen off ever since NASCAR took a closer look into them. Nice swig of water there by Eddie Kalegi.
Stay hydrated.
Right? No, so it's crazy because I think this is the first time that someone could realistically in the Cup Series minus 2014, Newman had a miracle run as someone might not win a race and could win the championship based off sheer consistency. I think this year could be the year. If Denny doesn't find victory lane, his regular season points will carry him to the championship four. Same like Truex, same like Harvick couldn't do last year. I think Hamlin is a surefire championship contender and the regular season champion going in. His points will carry him if he runs consistently enough as he has. I'm not worried about Hamlin making or missing the championship for. He's going to be there. But imagine the uproar if Denny were to win the championship and not win a race.
I mean, we saw it when Matt Crafton, and that was just in the Truck Series, and there was so much outpouring of anger, and that was just in the Truck Series. Imagine it in the Cup Series. We saw the frustration when Logano beat the Big Three a couple of years ago, and every year it seems like there's criticism.
When Bush in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Newman
Chase Elliott last year over
Harvick. Series championship. Mm-hmm. Ryan Newman was one spot away from winning a championship.
Imagine if he – but then again, he would have won the race and then won the championship. But imagine not winning a single race. From 1 to 35, not winning the race, and then winning race 36 and winning the championship. I'm not going to ramble on about how the point system is flawed. That's a discussion for another day, maybe during the offseason. But
I just want to say that's what – and I don't want to get into a whole points thing because I just want to get to Tim's pick in a second. But, like, with the way the system is, somebody could win the first 35 races of the season, finish second in the finale, and lose the championship. Yep. And somebody could lose the first 35 races, but be consistent, win the final race, and win the championship. But that's just the way it goes. But, Tim, I want to get over to you. Are you in agreement that Chase Elliott's the favorite this weekend, or who's your dark horse?
Oh, no, Chase Elliott's absolutely the favorite. And, the thing is for me is this, and I hate to say, Fox advertised going into this season back in the Daytona 500 that this may just be the best season ever. I don't want to jump and say that this is going to be the best season ever, but the most unexpected season ever. Let's be honest, after the last 2-3 years, at this point in the season, getting ready for the playoffs, who would imagine two of the most dominant drivers throughout the last 3 seasons of Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick would be winless? Who would have thought at all as well? Granted, okay, Kyle Busch had a mediocre season last year before he finally continued that win streak. But Kyle Busch, for example, would only have a couple wins. Martin Truex Jr. wouldn't have as many wins. Granted, he has a couple, but wouldn't have as many wins as what he typically does. And you look at those past big threes of past, granted, they've been all spread out years in, years out. And we've had so many separate different winners this year that my heart tells me going into this race, you're going to see a repeat winner. You're going to see something. But with how unpredictable the season's been, being someone that witnessed Loudon and thought, well, this is Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, or Kevin Harvick. In a nutshell, they've just looked so good. And then Eric Almirola completely comes out of nowhere late in the last 15% of the race, I'll say, in terms of the cut down distance, to find speed like no one else has on the long run to turn around and win a race was spectacular and proves just how unpredictable this season is. I mean, I could see a Ross Chastain winning at a road course. I could see Matt DiBenedetto. Granted, I would like to see more Daytona, if I'm being honest, Matt DiBenedetto winning a race finally after being so close so many times. Because Watkins Glen, such a fast road course like Road America, a lot has to go wrong. And the only way a lot is going to go wrong is if that 40% chance of rain that I believe Logan had mentioned, I think it was yesterday, because he's going to the race if I'm not mistaken. If that 40% chance of rain around start time holds true, this is going to be a really interesting race. Because outside of, I believe, maybe the Xfinity Series, was it 2-3 years ago? I don't know, it was when Paul Menard was still in the 2 car, I believe, in terms of slot starts or whatever. Or no, that's what, maybe 4 years ago now? I don't remember when Paul Menard retired anymore, or at least left RCR. But that was the last rain race I think we saw in terms of full rain from start to finish at Watkins Glen. And I think this is going to be real interesting if that happens to be the case. But again, I think this is a Chase Elliott track. Chase Elliott's real good at going fast and keeping up momentum. I think he's going to be a favorite, but I just do want to quickly touch on the point. And actually, I should say my underdog too. I'm going to say Kyle Busch. Do not underrate Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is due for a win here. We cannot say he hasn't. Think about how many times he's come so close and just hasn't won at the Glen. I think he could be due for a win, and he's been consistent pretty much as late. And let's be honest, He got an early vacation at Ladden, and if I were him, I'd be angry as well. I'd love to see him come out and win Watkins Glen, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But I do want to say this. You mentioned Denny Hamlin, obviously. He's going to lock up, as long as he gets stage points and has a clean day, he's going to lock up playoff berth at the end of this race. And I think, you look at it. Okay, sure. You mentioned, Tristan, that, if Denny Hamlin's clean, he's consistent, he's going to make the Final Four. But I don't see it that way. Because let's put it like this. It is only a matter of time before Kyle Larson catches Denny Hamlin. Granted, Denny Hamlin will be the highest on points, and that's all great and grand. But what does Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, and all those other guys have that, might I add, over years past, have been consistent when it matters in the playoffs? What do they have that Denny Hamlin won't have when he doesn't win the regular season title? He'll have bonus points. Denny Hamlin, granted, he's won a couple stages here and there. That's all he'll have if he doesn't win a.
Yeah, but Tim, he hasn't won any races, yet he still finds himself in the points lead. So he hasn't found that obstruction.
He'll get bonus, but what happens when Kyle Larson passes him? He'll only get the points for his finishing result.
Well,
I think
that's true.
I think about it like this, okay? Denny Hamlin should not have been in the Final Four last season. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, you won a lot of races. You had 2 top 10s the entirety of the playoffs going into Phoenix. You won a race that you shouldn't have won, in my opinion, still Talladega. And I think he had 1 top 10, I think it was Dover or something like that, where he finished 10th. That's someone that's championship caliber. Kevin Harvick just had a bad round. At least Kevin Harvick was around the top 5 majority of the playoffs and then just had a terrible last round. Now, granted, Harvick's the king of controversy when you talk about setting up things for the Final Four. But historically, and again, I will stand by this point. I said it before the season. I will say it again. Denny Hamlin chokes in the clutch. He is not a champion. He'll be the greatest non-champion in NASCAR history.
Well,
he can win races. He can be consistent. But when it matters, Denny Hamlin's not going to be there. And it's unfortunate, but the fact of the matter is, odds are stacked against him. And I truthfully don't believe Denny Hamlin has what it takes with this season and how unpredictable it's been for him to be a champion. Now, granted, I don't think Chase Elliott repeats. Sure, there could be opportunity. Maybe Kyle Busch or Martin Truex could get another one. But I truthfully think we're going to see a first-time champion.
It's going to be.
I don't think
it's going to be Larson. If it's a first-time champion, it's going to be Larson.
It's going to be fun to see, but I got to end things here. Tristan Biesel, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll have a lot more to talk about next week. But for Tim Moore, I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off on Sports Speak. Hope you have a great rest of your week.